All right. City Clerk, can we have a roll call of the members present?
My apologies, Mayor. I just realized that I hadn't unmuted Chambers. With that, Cumby?
Here.
Gabriel? Absent? Harrington?
Here.
O'Doherty?
Here.
Schmeckel?
Here.
Schuster?
Here.
Somerville?
Here.
Pierce?
Here.
Weaver?
Here.
That's 8 present and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. And
Point of information, Mr. Mayor, I don't think I heard that the recording had started. Has it?
I believe I saw it.
Okay, thanks. I'm used to it being more noticeable. Thanks.
Yeah, it's maybe more subtle now. I don't know, but I did see a notification. And for those of you that missed it, just a few minutes ago in the pre-meeting, Councilor Gabriel will be joining us as soon as he can. At least that is his plan. All right, so roll call the members present. Let's go to public comment on non-agenda items. Public comment on non-agenda items. Let's see. Do you see a hand up? I'm not sure if that's for an agenda item or a non-agenda item, but since the hand is up, I'm going to call on Allie, Sounding Sides. Go right ahead if you have a comment for us. Allie? Hello. We'll come back to Allie Sounding Sides. Other public comments. I see names that I'm familiar with on the list of attendees, but I think most of our guests are here to speak. Guests and members of the public, both are here to speak to agenda items. I don't see any further hands up for non-agenda item public comment. Council, I'm going to close the public comment on non-agenda items, and I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the following changes to the agenda be approved. First, item number 13 on our regular agenda is becoming item number 15A. And our second change is an addition and a new copy, a revised version of our Indigenous Peoples Day proclamation. And to tell the difference for those just tuning in right now, the latest version has the date after it, 10/5/21. Thank you.
Second.
Motion from the Vice Mayor and a second from Councilmember Somerville. All those in favor of the changes to the agenda, say aye or raise your hand or both.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Vice Mayor, back to you.
Thank you. I move that the agenda be set as changed.
Second.
Motion from the Vice Mayor, second from Councilmember Schuster. All those in favor, same sign as before. Aye.
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 Motion carries. And that takes us into item number 6 on our agenda, and our first item under that heading is our proclamation, which I'm now going to read. I want to mention that this proclamation was written in collaboration between staff folks at the University of Wyoming, keepers of the fire student organization, the American Indian Science and Engineering Society chapter of Wyoming, the Native American and Indigenous Studies Department, and the Native American Education Research and Cultural Center. Whereas Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations to the United Nations International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas, and whereas Columbus Day does not currently provide an opportunity to reflect on the colonization of Indigenous people by Europeans, and whereas prior to colonization, Indigenous peoples lived and flourished in the Americas for thousands of years. Whereas 2 federally recognized tribes reside within the state of Wyoming, the Northern Arapaho tribe and Eastern Shoshone tribe, and that the city of Laramie encompasses the ancestral homelands of other tribal nations. Whereas numerous cities and state governments within the United States now recognize Columbus Day also as Indigenous Peoples Day in an effort to create a path of healing and reconciliation and honor our nation's indigenous roots, history, and contributions. And whereas Laramie is honored to be home to the University of Wyoming, in which many indigenous students that represent many tribal nations have chosen to continue their education. And whereas it is the responsibility of the officials at all levels to foster inclusivity, racial equity, and justice for all people, and oppose systemic practices that perpetuate oppression. And whereas the city of Laramie recognizes and values the vast contributions made to the United States by indigenous people's knowledge, culture, education, and encourages other businesses, organizations, and community members to recognize and celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. Therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Laramie, Wyoming, that the second Monday of October shall be known as Indigenous Peoples Day in the City of Laramie to celebrate the contributions, the enduring culture, and traditions of Indigenous peoples, including the Northern Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone tribes of Wyoming. And let me say that the City Council and the City of Laramie is very pleased and honored to be asked to read this proclamation. And I believe I can comfortably say that the City Council is in support of this, and that our constituents and the residents of the City of Laramie are pleased to have an opportunity to do this as well. I know that we have some guests here to accept the proclamation at our Zoom meeting and perhaps say a word or two, and whoever would like to speak can indicate that they would like to do that by raising their hand. Right now, I'd like to recognize Renette Tendor to speak to us from the University of Wyoming, who is the program advisor for the Native American program, among other roles that she has. And welcome, and please. Oh, Ms. Tendor, I think you're on mute.
Yep, I am. I got it. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And sorry about the mute thing. Yeah, so my name's Renette Tendor. I'm the program director of the UW Native American Education Research and Cultural Center. And I work directly with our Native American community and our students on campus and in the Laramie community. We're super honored that we were able to work in collaboration with all of the Native organizations and also the City Council, and to be able to be here. And with Mayor Paul Weaver also being able to reach out and collaborate with us. It's been an honor, and we're very thankful for this opportunity, not on behalf of just me, but my students and our community and our tribes in Wyoming. I'm an enrolled member of the Northern Arapaho tribe. I'm also a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute and Northern Ute tribes. And so this means a lot to not just one tribe, but all tribes that are in Laramie. We have a big number. Our numbers are growing now that we have the Native Center on campus. You see our Native community here in Laramie growing because of that. And so, and having a position like mine to be able to provide support for Native students and to be able to to value our culture and our people and who we are, and being able to show that our students and our community that we can hang on to both identities and all the identities that we do carry. living here in Laramie. So it's been such an honor to be able to be a part of this, but to also work with my students. My Native students were a big part of writing this and being included in this, and their voice matters just as much. I'm a big advocate for my students and for my community, but on behalf of my students, I know how much this also means to them and to our children. A lot of our students are parents. We all have our children in the school districts here in Laramie, and it means a lot to be able to have our children's identities valued too here in Laramie, and how much this means to be able to be a part of this. It has been a great honor. And I'd like to call on some of our students. I know there's a couple that attended that may have wanted to say something. And so maybe if you can raise your hand on the thing, I think they directed us to do that. And yeah, we can call on some of my students.
Absolutely. Just waiting just a second while we wait for some hands to come up, and thank you for that. And you know, I will say again that we on the city council think this is a great opportunity for us as well, and it's a really positive thing and something we're glad to be part of.
And it's also been, I've been really fortunate to be, I got my undergraduate degree here when I was young, and then came back and got my master's degree, and then now make my life here and with my children. And so Laramie is my second home away from the Wind River Reservation. It'll always be my second home. And even though I live here, my primary home is the Wind River Reservation. But like I said, Laramie means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to our students and the ones that continue making their lives here even after school. Yeah, I don't know if any of the students.
Well said. That's well said. Thank you. I see that we do have a hand raised up, and I believe that Allie, and I hope I'm saying the first name right, Allie Sounding Sides. And Allie, when you see yourself on the screen, there you go. Go ahead and share whatever you'd like to.
Thank you. I just wanted to apologize. My internet connection is not that great. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to come speak here. Also, for putting this on the agenda. I know that, like Renette stated, this means something to us. I'm Northern Arapaho. I'm a student at the University of Wyoming College of Law. And as a Northern Arapaho woman, you know, we grew up with stories about our homelands, and Laramie is situated within our homelands. And actually, you know, you think about things like Vitavu, you know, Vitavu is a watered down Arapaho word. Vita'awu means Mother Earth. And so, like Renette said, you know, this proclamation kind of just recognizes us as a whole, because there's a pretty large Native community within Laramie. You know, we're in the grocery stores with you guys. Our kids are in school with your kids, your grandkids. And so I think having that day recognized as Indigenous Peoples Day allows us to further be seen. So I just wanted to thank you guys for your time, and thank you for putting this on the agenda today.
Well, thank you. And you're very welcome. And thank you for joining us tonight, being here and sharing some words with us, and sharing some of those things that you did. It'd be great if we could just continue to increase opportunities for people to learn about things and about the history of where they live and how that's tied to the diversity of the people that we live with and all of those things. And so,
and I also wanted
really,
to add to, on top of what Allie had said, I just wanted to add that that's kind of how we collaborated with this. Is as Native people, we come in a strength in numbers. There's a power in numbers. And so we made sure that a lot of our Native organizations and our clubs on campus were a part of this. That's just what we do. We come in numbers, and we all value each other's voices and what we all have to say. And so it made it more powerful that there was so many people involved in this. And this has been in the making for years. We've been talking about this and in our Native community for years, but to have the opportunity, like Allie said, is just something so meaningful to us as Native people.
Thank you. Thank you. I see that we have Alexis Weidrock has raised a hand to join us, and I want to recognize Alexis to say some words with us.
Yes, hello, Yate. My name is Alexis Weidrock. I am an undergrad student for the University of Wyoming, studying kinesiology and health. I'm also the ACES president. ACES stands for American Indian Science and Engineering Society. I think this is important to have Indigenous Peoples Day for the fact that I didn't grow up on a reservation. I am enrolled Shoshone Paiute of the Duck Valley Indian Reservation, and I'm also Navajo. So I didn't really have this opportunity to have my Native culture taught to me in my own public school or be around that. I would have to visit my extended family on the reservations. So this is really great to have an outreach and be able to have our community here in Laramie have this so all of us can feel included.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have time for some more words. I see that we have another hand raised. I've got I'm not sure if the name is turned around, but on the screen name, it's Wolfstar Duran. So welcome, and please say whatever you'd like to the City Council.
Oops, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties.
There you are.
Yeah, sorry. I really just want to thank you, and I'm so glad we had this opportunity. So my name is Wolfstar Duran. I'm president of Keepers of the Fire, and I work really closely with Rena and people at the Native Center, like Alexis, who's our other president for another Native organization. And this is really nice because I'm also going to my 4th year here at UW, and so it's super nice that we can collaborate, come together, and acknowledge that Indigenous Peoples Day and those who also were here before us, and acknowledge that we are present and we are here. So thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, I know our Native Center is represented by several different tribes. Our whole Native community, we have so many tribes in Wyoming, that are represented here at the University of Wyoming, with our 2 tribes here, our home tribes. But we have so many different tribes represented in Laramie. It's so awesome to hear and see and meet all the different people. Even my own children are from different tribes. My children are Eastern Shoshone, and have some is also from the Crow tribe. So I have a big intertribal connection with all of these different tribes that surround Wyoming as well. And so it's awesome to have our students represented from different tribes and come from different backgrounds and different stories. But this just shows how meaningful it is to have something like this in the city of Laramie.
Well, that is, again, just very well said indeed. Renette, I'm going to see if we have any more hands up, but I also wanted to ask you if you wanted to, oh, yes, I do see another hand up for someone that would like to speak. Christy Wildcat, welcome. And when I see you on my screen, I'll turn it over to you. You've got it. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, dos Nathanan and Anana, Christy Wildcat, Hanana Anana. I just wanted to thank all of you for really taking this on and really introducing us to the conversation. And I want to thank you for having a conversation with me earlier today about in full support of this. It really means a lot, especially as an Indigenous woman, since in the whole media that's going on right now about missing murdered Indigenous women, this is definitely a good step in the right direction. And I just want to say thank you again, and I look forward to working with all of you, hopefully in the future, especially not just on Indigenous Peoples Day, but on other special days to us. I mean, like Native American Heritage Month, that's coming up in November. So hopefully this isn't the end, but that's all I have to say. Ho-ho.
It's also very well said. Yeah, it's not about a day. It's about, starting somewhere and talking about things and keeping things going. And again, we're just really glad to be able to be part of the conversation. That's the big thing for us. Renette, I was going to ask you if you'd like to share with us about any activities or anything going on with the programs or anything happening at the campus.
Yes,
or
okay.
Next week.
Yeah, one day. So our student orgs, Keepers of the Fire, ACES, and the Native Center is going to have a Indigenous Peoples Day event during the lunch hour on Monday. in Simpsons Plaza right by the Union. We have a different agenda kind of set up through the hour. We'll just be out there handing stickers and giving some, just talking and interacting with people as we do every year. We try to make sure that we do something on this day. And we'll be all out there for that hour, the lunch hour. And we'll be on Simpsons Plaza. If anybody wants to join or if anyone's interested, you can reach out to the Native Center. One of our workers, will be happy to answer any questions. For Native Month, as Christy mentioned, we also have a big event coming up in November. We'll be showing the screening Home from the film Home from School, which comes from, it's a movie or documentary out of the Wind River, based on Wind River, and having to do with the Carlisle boarding school. And then some of our Native people were able to be a part of that, our tribal people on the reservation. And it's a super powerful story, directed and produced by some amazing people, and one of our very own UW alum, Jordan Dresser. And so we are showing that. It'll film nationally on PBS in November, but I believe our screening is going to happen first. So Laramie is really lucky and to have this opportunity to show it before it's showed nationally on PBS. So we'll have a screening here in November, November 4th, in the evening of November 4th, and it's open to the public, and we'll have it at the, as far as I know, I think at the Arts and Sciences, but it will be on campus on November 4th. And so that's our big Native event month we're going to have, because we'll also be hosting a panel of the producer, the director, and the people who, and some people who participated in traveling out to Carlisle, and how powerful that story was. So they'll be here to speak, and we'll be hosting them at the Native Center at UW as well too. And we're very lucky to have one of our own UW students be a part of that film, and he'll be a part as well. So that movie is a super powerful movie that I recommend to anybody. I was fortunate enough to go to a private screening in Riverton with it, and I can't say enough good words about it, and it's starting to get out there. People are really requesting it. And so we're honored to be able to show it in Laramie and at the University of Wyoming.
Thank you. Well, I'll just say again that we're very pleased to read in that proclamation this evening, and we are very grateful that you were felt like you could approach the City Council to do that, because it's something we warmly welcome. And I guess I would just close by saying thanks to all of you that came to talk to us tonight. Christy, Wolfstar, Ali, Alexis, Renette, thank you so much for being here. And we will make sure that signed proclamation is delivered to your organization. Somebody will bring it. And we're just very, very pleased to be part of this event. And we look forward to all those things that you told us about.
Yes, and thank you all again so much, not on behalf of me, just me, but my family, my students, my community, and just Indigenous people across the nation. This means so much to all of us. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Have a great rest of your night. Well, Council, as we say, it's good to start the meetings with positive things. That one's going in the book for probably one of the better openings to our City Council meetings. I am going to move on now, regrettably, to our next item on the agenda. Actually, it's a good one too, and that is the proclamation for Community Planning Month. And we have Mr. Tini here, but let me read in the proclamation. Community planning is important, and nobody knows that like local government people. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places. And whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories. And whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorse National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our settlements and environment. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of Laramie, Wyoming. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional community and regional planners in Laramie, Wyoming, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Paul Weaver, acting as mayor and president of the governing body of the city of Laramie, Wyoming, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2021 as Community Planning Month in the city of Laramie, Wyoming, in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. And I think Mr. Cheney's here to talk to us a little bit, and we're glad to be able to do this as well. I really like the language in that, just before I go over to you, about talking about the thanks going out to those planning commissions that are all over the United States, including here, and the work and the time that they put in for that. I think that's a very worthy thing to recognize. Mr. Cheney?
Mayor and council, thank you. I'll keep my comments brief, but with October being planning month, it's just a great opportunity just to kind of highlight and just remember some of the things that our council does, that our state does, that our city does related to planning. And, throughout our community, we have many things that happen, not only just your day-to-day planning activities that sometimes council sees or our planning commission, but also the things that make our community great, the things that make our community special. And, Laramie is lucky. The community is largely supportive of the planning efforts that occur within our community, no matter if it's something related to artwork or park planning or just the general development of our community. And so I think I challenge everyone just as they kind of go about their day to think about how planning relates to their everyday life, but then also to, think about the people that participate in the planning process. Not only do you all spend your time, participating as elected officials, but we have our many boards and commissions that all do planning in some sense, in some way, sometimes. And I think, recognizing their efforts, but then finally also recognizing the citizens' efforts of their participation in the projects that come through, providing public comment, providing guidance so that hopefully the products that we produce are good products and products that are something that allows for longevity in our community related to whatever topic that is. And so just with that, I just thank the council for the proclamation and look forward to planning more.
It's good to have a plan. It's good to have a plan. Thank you, Mr. Cheney, for that and giving us that breakdown. And I think that's also very well said. Sometimes underappreciated aspect of having a good community. Council, I'm going to move on now to our next item on the agenda, which is announcements. And for that, I think we'll check with Assistant City Manager Feeser if he has any announcements for us or can direct us to where we need to go for announcements.
Honorable Mayor, we didn't have any announcements for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any disclosures by City Council members on any items on the agenda this evening? Seeing none. Go to the next item. I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Second.
I think the second was from Councilor Schmeckel. No? Councilor Harrington. Motion from the Vice Mayor, second from Councilor Harrington on the motion to the consent agenda. City Clerk, we have a roll call.
Humby,
Yes.
Gabriel, absent. Harrington,
Yes.
Doherty,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
The motion carries. All right. Going into the regular agenda. Item number 11. Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. The agenda item title is Award of a Bid, Police Department Patrol Division 3 4-door hybrid SUV police package patrol vehicles. I move to award the bid for 3 4-door hybrid SUV police package patrol vehicles, Unit 129, Unit 135, and Unit 172 to Spradley Bar, Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the total amount of $110,161 and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second.
Motion and a second from Vice Mayor. Who do we have for the background? It looks like Mr. Webb. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, Honorable Mayor, City Council, our fleet division bid out 3 police vehicles. 2 of these were in our replacement schedule, normal replacements with trade-ins. The third vehicle is a replacement of a totaled police car. We've received insurance funds back from WARM on that third vehicle to pay for that one. So three vehicles. These are SUV, all-wheel drive, hybrid vehicles. You awarded a couple of these last fiscal year, and they are in service now, and the police department is very happy with them, the way they're performing, and seeing some savings in fuel. And so we had one bid, Spradley Bar, and their cost was reasonable, and so we're recommending award of the 3 vehicles.
Questions for Mr. Webb about this bid for these replacement items? Oh, Councilmember O'Doherty.
I was wondering, so can you now reduce idling, or idling isn't a thing with the hybrid, right? You don't have to idle when you're not running.
Yeah, Councilor O'Doherty. So these vehicles, we're estimating 343 gallons of fuel savings a year while the vehicle's moving. But idle time, we're estimating 1,276 gallons saved. And that idle time number is so much bigger because when the vehicle's parked and idling, the combustion engine will actually shut down at times, keep all the electronics running with the battery. And then if the battery starts to draw too much or the vehicle gets too cold, then the engine will kick on for a little bit. So we realize a big savings in fuel on our idle time. In the cold months, of course, our police vehicles idle quite a bit so that they're ready to go. And so we will see a big savings in fuel just based on idle time. With both of those numbers combined, the savings in gallons, we realize about $3,500 in fuel savings per year. So that $3,500 basically in 1 year pays for the additional cost of the hybrid, right? So the hybrid vehicle is about $3,500 more than a standard, the standard vehicle. So in 1 year, we'll see that savings. And then the calculation through the EPA calculator is a potential savings of over 25,000 pounds of CO2 per vehicle per year.
Going over to Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. I know that we put all of our vehicles in the entire city on a, I want to know how I want to state this, a replacement time schedule. So can I ask approximately what the replacement time schedule on a police department vehicle is, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, Councilor Schuster, through you, Mayor. With the police vehicles, we're seeing 7 to 8 years. All the vehicles differ. We use a point system now. So depending on mileage, the cost to maintain that vehicle over time, so on and so forth, they get more points. But on average, we're probably seeing around 7 years on the police vehicles.
Thank you very much. And if anybody has a question on a hybrid, I am hybrid certified. Like I said in the pre-meeting, that I'd be happy to answer any question on those too. I looked it up. I saw which vehicle you're using. They have a very good rating, so I'm happy to see that. On hybrids, the biggest savings they have is they have no wasted motion, I call it. On a normal vehicle, when you come up to a stop sign, you step on the brakes, you have friction material, it squeezes a rotor, and you come to a stop. On a hybrid vehicle, when you step on the brakes, it turns the electric motors down at the wheels into generators and generates up to a full charge in the battery again when you're using your brakes. So they take out any wasted motion and they put it back to good use, as in charging up the vehicle.
Councilmember Schuster, would you say that transition for our city fleet vehicles in the direction of hybrid or renewable fuel vehicles is a good public policy choice?
Yes, I believe it is, in the cost savings that actually pay for the difference in a hybrid to that. My only downfall on these is the batteries are very expensive, and I want to make sure that our fire department is trained if a vehicle is in an accident, how to react to a hybrid vehicle. They have 300 volt, 300 amp batteries in there, which they're secured in there quite well. But if there's a catastrophic accident, you need to be careful if you go running up to the vehicle. That's all I'm saying. The odds of a catastrophic accident are not that big. So, I mean, it's probably along the lines of getting struck by lightning. Both are shocking situations.
The chief of our fire department was here earlier, but I think he wisely has exited the meeting, so I don't have to pin him down now. Mr. Webb, did I hear you talk about these vehicles being pretty generally well received by the department, and everybody's been pretty happy with their performance and overall satisfied with them? I think I heard you talk about that.
Yeah, Mayor, that's correct. We before the first two were purchased, we had a demo unit come in, and our police department used that for a couple of weeks, and they were pleased with it. And so that's what moved us forward with the first two. Those first two are now in service, like I said, and they're really happy with their performance and what they're doing. They don't see any lag in the performance that they're used to. So they're very pleased. Before Fleet Division bids any of these vehicles out, we work with that department to make sure they're getting what they need. And so we didn't do this in a bubble. We did this with the police department, and they're very happy with what they're getting.
That's good for us to hear about that. I'm glad to hear it. Any other questions for Mr. Webb on this bid? Yep, go ahead, Councilor Harrington.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Webb, could you one more time give me how much the EPA calculator said that we would save in carbon emissions from each vehicle annually?
Yeah, Councilor Harrington, through you, Mayor. It's 25,560 pounds per vehicle per year.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to thank you for including that, and then the cost savings, but also the fuel savings. I appreciate you including that for a fleet purchase.
Sure. Yeah, Ford actually has a really good calculator on their webpage, and they do some comparisons with the standard vehicle and the hybrid vehicles, so that the customer can really look at it and see the value there.
Thank you. Gonna give it another shot for questions for Mr. Webb before I go to the public comment, if we have some on this item. Okay, we'll go to public comment on it if there is any. Checking. Seeing none on this item, council, one more shot at it before we go to the vote. No takers. City Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Somerville,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Gabriel, absent, Cumby,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
And that motion carries. Thank you, City Clerk. Now we'll go on to item number 12, which I believe is going to be introduced by Councilmember Cumby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to award the bid for Unit 602 dozer with trade-in to Wyoming Machinery Company, Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the total amount of $451,325 and amend the budget as appropriate and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Second.
Second from the Vice Mayor. Mr. Webb, over to you.
Honorable Mayor, City Council. So this bulldozer is at the landfill. It's a replacement of the one that's been out there for many years. I think it's been out there for 7, 8 years. And keep in mind, when we bid these out, the lead time on some of these are still a year out. So you award it tonight, we don't see it for another year. It takes them so long to build these and get them to us nowadays. So anyway, by the time we get it in, that what we have there now will be even a year older. Anyway, this was again part of our replacement program. We bid out on this as an electric drive, again to help meet the carbon emission goal. With the D6XE is what was bid. We see about a 35% fuel savings per year. That's about 8,000 gallons a year on this piece of equipment. So the electric drive works in that the engine inside is actually a smaller engine than normal, and it powers a generator, and that generator is an electric motor that moves the final drive. So there's virtually no transmission, less moving parts, and less for the combustion engine to push, right? So it's powered through electric. It's very similar to how the locomotives work nowadays. They're burning the diesel fuel to really push that generator. So anyway, we went out to bid on this. We got one bid in from Wyoming Machinery Company. Their bid price was right in line with what we're seeing in industry standard and what's expected. And so we're recommending award of bid for Unit 602.
Thank you very much. Questions for Public Works Director Webb? Councilmember O'Doherty.
I just have a comment that I'm so grateful that you've incorporated the fuel savings. Thank you.
Other comments or questions on the item? Public Works kicking button taking names on our carbon emissions goals, which we like to hear about. We like to hear about these things. Let's see if we have public comment on this item. Don't see any for this item. One last chance for questions or comments. I guess I'd ask you a question, seeing no other hands up right now. Mr. Webb, you talked about how long it takes to get these things in after they're bid out and the city opts for purchase. And yeah, everything, as you mentioned, is taking even longer. So a big equipment purchase like this, it's probably to be expected. But because we have a planned out replacement schedule and follow it pretty closely, I assume getting another year's worth of work out of our existing equipment has been part of that plan this whole time. We don't have any concerns there that we could, foresee or predict out in any reasonable way. Is the council safe in assuming that, and that we're okay on that equipment for another year while we wait for the new stuff to come in?
Yes, Mayor, that's correct. We take that into account. Those lead times are getting longer, so every year when we go through and we redo the replacement schedule, we forecast that out a little more, because we have seen that increase over the past couple of years.
Well, thank you very much. And the council is really impressed by the work that's being done with that department on so many things, and including this carbon neutrality plan. We really appreciate it, and we're glad to hear all of that. Council, let's go to a roll call vote. City Clerk?
Humby,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Gabriel, absent, Pierce,
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
That motion carries. Thank you, City Clerk. Let's go to item number 14. And with that, we're going to go to Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Clerk. If I mess up this introduction, you just let me know. So I move to approve City Council Resolution number 2021-64, certifying Planning Commission action regarding a comprehensive plan amendment to amend the future land use map 3.2 of the 2007 Laramie Comprehensive Plan from auto urban residential to suburban commercial of an approximate 0.82 acre properties located at 259 Fremont Street and 260 Pine Street, based on findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Second.
Second from the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Harrington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and move to postpone Resolution 2021-64. Let's see. Setting a public hearing for October 19th, 2021. And we will postpone it to November 2nd, 2021. Sorry for the clumsiness of that.
Second.
Motion and a second from the Vice Mayor. I do see that we have Mr. Cox from our planning department here, and he may want to add a little bit to this and provide us with some background on the item and a little bit for the postponement. So over to you, sir.
Mayor, Council, thank you so much. Yes, postponement is due to the fact that comprehensive plan amendments only require one reading. And with this comprehensive plan amendment, we also have a zoning amendment. Basically, the end goal of these two partnered applications is to make the properties within the application B1, or our limited business zoning district. Specifically for this application, we are only talking about changing auto urban residential to suburban commercial. The reason for that being is that auto urban residential does not encompass the B1 zoning district, thus moving it to suburban commercial, which does. I did want to do a couple updates for council as well as members of the public on this call. At the Planning Commission meeting, we did have a member of the public who said they did not receive public notice through mail. Staff did look into this, and unfortunately that member of the public is not a property owner for the place that he lives, and so thus the letter went to the owner of the house rather than the tenant. We assumed that was the case, and we did communicate that to the member during Planning Commission, but still looked into the matter. The other one is just a I guess, a concern that we've had from a number of residents on the west side around the idea that a brewery or a brew pub is going in at this location. I can assure you that staff has not heard anything of the matter, and currently under the R2 district, a brew pub nor a brewery is permitted, and within the B1 district, a brewery is not permitted and a brew pub would require a conditional use application. So if that was to ever come to fruition, it would have to go through staff as well as planning commission. And so we have not heard that as of yet, and the developer has not come to us. So I'm gonna kind of encompass a lot of information through this application as well, because it will become pertinent to the next application, and we can kind of move that through that a little quicker as well. But the properties that we are talking about are at 260 Pine Street and 259 Fremont. The 259 Fremont is the old Spiegelberg Lumber Company. And so it's that Art Deco looking building, been there since 1941 and has always been the same use as it currently is today. 260 Pine Street is across the street on Pine from there. And it is a vacant lot around the size of 16,000 square feet. And there is another property just to the south of it that is just a corner small parking lot. And so those are the properties that we're talking about today. To our knowledge, the interest of the developer of the vacant lot is to be a multifamily development in the future, though he has not come up with a concept as of yet due to the fact of not knowing what zoning district he will be in. If the development or if the property is rezoned to B1, a multifamily development would require a conditional use. Thus, it will have to go back to Planning Commission, allowing for the public to provide comment, expectation, etc. As for the Spiegelberg building, we we don't believe there's any plans for the Spiegelberg building after rezoning, or if rezoning is approved. Basically, the Spiegelberg building, the use of it falls more in line with a limited business district rather than the R2 limited multifamily district. And so our understanding is that they wanted to rezone it to be more in line with that use, thus allowing the building to be used in various ways in the future. As of right now, if the Spiegelberg building wanted to become something else, it is very limited in the uses that it could be under the R2 district, and would most likely have to be retrofitted pretty intensely to become residential units, or one of very few uses that require a conditional use in the R2 district, such as a cafe or a restaurant without a drive-in, or a neighborhood office of some sort, but very kind of limited in what the building could be, and most likely requiring it to have heavy improvements done to it. And so next, the main reason, basically, when this application was brought to staff, we had a really hard time deciding what future land use we wanted to identify here, as well as the zoning district. And if you'll notice, under auto urban residential, R3 is a permitted zone in there. And that would suffice for the developer's need to do multifamily residential. Unfortunately, if you look at the whole zoning map of the west side, you'll notice that there is no R3 zoning on the west side. And so to the west of this property, you'll see along Cedar Street that there is a cluster of B1 zoning district. And so allowing or going after B1 for the property would, one, meet the developer's intent to have multifamily residential through a conditional use, but it also avoids that that thing that we always try to avoid in most cases, which is an island zone in the city. This also helped that the Spiegelberg building was more associated in line with the B1 district. Thus, we just kind of continued a leg of B1 to the east from the polygon that's just to the west of it. Historically, the west side has had a lot of neighborhood businesses within it. In more recent times, a lot of those businesses you've seen disappeared, but through Garfield to University along Cedar Street, it used to be a very heavy commercial corridor, and you'll still see some of those remnants, sorry, not remnants, but still existing businesses today through Bud's, Bernie's, the church, Lincoln Community Center, a number of other buildings that were initially for commercial uses, such as the old petrol station, and some of the other uses along the west side of Cedar that have been converted to apartments or construction storage or things of that nature. And so we are in favor of just having more B1 and suburban commercial designations in the west side, because they are very basically within the comprehensive plan and our zoning district definitions. B1 is a very sensitive district meant to accommodate and kind of be that gradient between neighborhood and more intense uses such as the B2 and C2 zoning districts. And so this is where you'll see smaller markets, doctor's offices, anything that can really bring an amenity to a neighborhood. And so you'll also notice through all the work that we've been doing with the housing challenges within the city of Laramie, that this site, the vacant site at 260 Pine Street, was actually used as a rendering for what could be within the R2 district if future proposed changes to the UDC are made. And so within the comp plan, as well as the housing study, we have identified the goal that is to find infill projects and take advantage of them. And the west side is a perfect neighborhood for this because, one, it's quiet. It's like, you know, separated from Snowy Range by the vacant lot across the street from Optimus Park, but also you have the pedestrian bridge that connects you right to downtown and all the uses right there, and a quick drive to supermarkets such as Safeway and things like Planet Fitness and whatever else we have along the 3rd Street commercial corridor, as well as the Snowy Range commercial corridor. So this kind of, all of this helped us really understand what zoning district might be best used here. Within most applications that people have to go through, there are a number of required findings that staff as well as the applicant must find, and that is no different within a comp plan amendment. In summary, you can see them within the staff report, but in summary, it's mostly saying that it is in line with our comprehensive plan. We've been able to find goals within it or other adopted documents from the city, and this truly is a great opportunity, we believe, to start kind of ticking off away at our housing challenge by allowing for quantity on the west side, but as well as the ability to take it through a conditional use allows for the public to engage further into the process if it is rezoned within B1. Planning Commission did recommend approval of this comp plan amendment with a vote of 4-1 with 2 absent. We did have a number of public comments and concerns around this application, or both applications, the comp plan and zoning. Some were that parking would be an issue. Some were that it would detract away from the pedestrian feel of the neighborhood. Others were height that could be built if allowed to be B1. Staff has not identified a parking problem in this area due to the fact that most of this block is either a commercial use or a large vacant lot. The other, for height, the B1 district has a maximum building height of 50 feet compared to the R2 that is 40 feet in height. The brewery and brew pub were another concern there. And just overall, like a change in feel of the west side was a comment that we heard a number of times at Planning Commission. Staff does agree with the recommendation of postponement, and I am here to answer any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. And Council, I appreciate the flexibility to allow the planner to go through that for this item and also for the next item at the same time to try to keep a little efficiency with the meeting. Do we have any questions for Mr. Cox? Before we go to, yeah, Councilmember O'Doherty.
I don't know if it's appropriate because are we talking about postponement? Is this the appropriate time to ask?
We should largely keep the comments to postponement if we can.
So then I'll wait.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty, and as always, thank you for your attention to protocol. Anything on the postponement that you'd like to ask that hasn't been explained already? All right, let's see if there's a public comment on the item with respect to postponement. Seeing none, Council, one more time. City Clerk, we have a roll call.
Cumby.
Yes.
Gabriel. Gabriel.
You're muted.
I saw a yes from him.
Can follow up with a yes if he needs to.
Harrington.
Yes.
Sorry, Councilor Gabriel, I saw you.
Yeah, I just got here and I was trying to reconnect, so I will abstain.
Okay. O'Doherty.
Yes.
Schmeckel.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 abstention, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That motion carried. That'll take us into item number 15, which is Councilmember Schmeckel.
All right, the title is Original Ordinance Number 2032, amending the City of Laramie's official zoning map to zone properties located at 259 Fremont Street and 260 Pine Street as B1 Limited Business District within the City of Laramie. I move to approve Original Ordinance Number 2032 on first reading, establishing B1 zoning district for properties approximately 0.82 acres in size, located at 259 Fremont Street and 260 Pine Street, in accordance with findings of fact and conclusions of law, and set a public hearing for October 19th, 2021.
Second.
Motion and a second from Councilmember Harrington. Should we take it over just for any follow-up from Mr. C from planning? If you have any, go right ahead, sir.
Mayor, Council, thank you, and thank you for being flexible on the last one. It's hard to stop when I get going. But anyways, I will just read the purpose of the B1 district and be good from there. The purpose of the B1 zone district is intended for retail and office uses. The district includes retail centers that provide shopping service to surrounding neighborhoods in the community, commercial uses that would not be compatible with surrounding residential areas are prohibited or subject to special restrictions. Again, the reason we are going with B1 is to avoid having an island zone in this location. Thank you.
Thank you. Question on the B1 issue for planner. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cox, I was wondering if you could just talk just a little bit more about how the Spiegelberg property came to be included in this request. I understand the applicant's request for his lots, but I'm a little confused because I've heard a few different explanations.
Mayor, Council, of course. So actually, the applicants are both Michael Miller, who is the owner of the vacant property, as well as the Spiegelberg Lumber Company. Basically, we don't, this isn't always the case, but due to the fact that these properties are adjacent together, we allowed them to be in the same application together. And so one, that just kind of cuts the cost down for each applicant, being able to share that. But also, yeah, just essentially just like teaming up together to knock out two properties at once.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So on the last item, you said that there really wasn't any plans for the Spiegelberg property, and I understand it's got a long history of grandfathered use. Can you just talk a little bit about why we would consider moving it to B1 if there's no need, no immediate plans in the future that would require rezoning?
Mayor, Council, of course. So basically, it's with most properties, when there is a use that one doesn't seem to be affecting the neighborhood and it seems to be compatible with the place. It's just an added bonus that luckily it does work within a zone district that doesn't fit it. And so in this case, moving the Spiegelberg property to B1, it gets it closer to the zone district that is more in line with the use that is going on there. But thinking into the future, if the Spiegelbergs end up selling that property, essentially if it stays R2, you really only have one use that it can truly be without major reshaping of the building. And so that would be a lumber company and cabinet maker in the back. To make it residential units would be a hefty push for the building, and then we possibly run the risk of having a vacant building because no one can find a good use for it, which is never a good thing to have within a neighborhood. Essentially, the idea of like a broken window syndrome. But yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Councilmember O'Doherty.
Looks like the properties to the west, you're saying those are B1 also, but they look like they're homes. Is that right? They're currently just residents.
Mayor, Council, you are correct. Yeah, they are all single family homes to my knowledge.
Matthew, we have some other areas of Laramie that would mirror that are zoned B1, but they're largely homes. I'm thinking of 4th and 5th Street off of, say, from like Grand to Sheridan. That's a B1 zone that's actually primarily residential. There's a few businesses there. And there may even be some other areas, but it's that type of situation, I think.
Mayor, Council, you are correct. And even just to the south of here at Garfield and Cedar, you'll notice it's largely zone B2, but has a residential overlay for it. One, because if you look back, funny enough, if you look back at zoning maps from the 60s, it actually has the exact same zoning polygons that you see here today, including the B2 to the south, the B1 on Cedar, and even Buds has been zoned B2 for who knows how long. And so it's basically been just continued in that fashion into our current zoning practices standards.
Other questions about the B1 zoning uses as it relates to see if there's public comment on this item. I see that we have a hand up. I'd like to welcome Ms. Gina Chavez to the meeting, and thanks for being here and thanks for your time tonight. Go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I have a question about with the B1 use. How does that influence the residences? I'm still not clear about that. Do they also become B1?
Council members, I'd like to request that we allow that question to be answered, which is usually not what we do with public comments, but I think it's a fair and appropriate question. So without objection, and Matthew, if you'd like to give you a crack at it.
Mayor, Council, Ms. Chavez, it would not affect the residents. Basically, B1 would only, the spot on the map that would be amended would only be 260 Pine Street and 259 Fremont Street. No one else around them would get rezoned. Everyone stays in the R2 zone, what most of that neighborhood is currently zoned.
Ms. Chavez, did that get to the substance of what you were asking? I see you raised the hand again. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that does answer that question for me. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
No, absolutely. No, that was a perfectly fair question, and just check to see if there was anything else you wanted to ask or any other comment you wanted to make before we move on.
Yes, and not to beat a dead horse, but since we're before council, some of the concerns that I have and that I have heard is about the size of the building and again, parking. We don't have a lot of businesses right now and in that area. And one question, and I hope it's okay if I ask this question. You help me if this isn't the right time, but
we're gonna let you go for it.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. The developer has mentioned that he, depending on which direction we go, B1 or R2, if we go B1, he would like to, he's contemplating building like maybe a 20-unit apartment building. And so I understand that there are requirements for how many parking spaces are required. So my question is, how many, okay, and I believe Mr. Cox filled me in on this last time, that there can be 4 unrelated individuals that live in an apartment, I think. And so I wanted to find out if the developer, for example, were to build 20 units and 2-bedroom, let's just say 2-bedroom, how many people can live in there? Could 4 people live in that one unit?
Let's we'll get the answer to that question. And council, I know that our longtime resident here does appreciate the flexibility to double check on this. Matthew, do you want to go for it?
Mayor, Council, thank you. So basically, under the R2 district currently, you would be able to only have 3 unrelated people within a living space. If it is rezoned to B1, 4 people would be allowed to stay in a unit that were not related. If people are related by blood, then the number is kind of infinite, honestly. As far as how many units can be on the property, I will tell you 20 units would not be possible for that property. It is around 16,000 square feet. And so under the B1 district, you would only be able to maximize up to 16 units. But that is if you find a amazing architect that can fit all the parking on there, the landscaping, the required public realm, or the common space courtyard-esque thing. And so it would be limited at around 16 if he can fit those things on there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then
One more question?
Yes. Okay, so with the B1 zoning, as I understand, there would be more community, there could be more community involvement about what is built there. I think that's a big deal for me and other folks that I've spoken to, you know, that we have some say in what is going to be in that space. We understand that a person's property rights are golden, but we do, we would like to have some participation, something so that people don't feel like they're being run over. I know that we had one neighbor who is just really upset, and so far the neighborhood people get along with each other, and so I guess that's a question. B1 allows for more community involvement. Is that correct?
It depends. It depends on what process you're talking about. Matthew, I'll take a stab at this because I think some of the answer. Things that would have to go through conditional use permit or modified uses under B1 might be some of those things that the neighbors may be concerned about. Those would have public hearings and would have processes where the Planning Commission would consider them and would consider community comment and might take those into consideration in terms of conditions. And there may be some other aspects there that I've missed. Did I get close, Mr. Cox? Yeah. So I think the answer is yes, there would be some opportunity. There would be some opportunity there for a community process.
Okay, thank you. I think that's, let me look at my notes here.
Vice Mayor, well, Ms. Chavez checking her notes. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I think one thing we need to point out about a conditional use permit, and I could have it wrong, but my current understanding is that a conditional use permit is approved by the Planning Commission and does not come before council. So I think it's important for the folks in that neighborhood to know that that process related to conditional use remains with the Planning Commission and does not come to council for consideration.
Okay.
Very well said. Very, very well said. They would, of course, have a meeting, a public meeting, where they would have a period for comment, input, and a hearing of community concerns. But that decision does lie with the Planning Commission. Ms. Chavez, it sounded like you had. Oh, I'm going to go to Matthew, and then I'll go back to you.
Mayor Council, I just wanted to point out the applicant is on the call tonight. I just noticed that he was on, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I will appreciate that. I don't see any other hands up, but if we do get somebody, and I'm going to, Ms. Chavez, we appreciate your questions and your concern. We want to give you ample time, but this is a little bit of a departure from our usual public comment process. I think it's been appropriate for this, but I'm going to have to ask you to maybe keep this as your last question, whatever your next question is.
Well, I don't know that I really had a
burning
question. I think that answers. Well, just that at the last Planning Commission meeting, I felt as though I and maybe it's just because it was the first time. I don't know that I felt that the commission was giving a lot of attention to our concerns. But that was just a takeaway that I had.
Perfectly appropriate comment to make to the council, and well within your rights as a Laramie resident to share that with us. We'd like to make sure you don't have that feeling with our process. So
I don't. Thank you.
We appreciate your willingness to be here and take part and ask some questions. So thank you. And there'll be another opportunity. Let's see if there's other. Yes, I see that we've got Wendy Chapman. Let's raise your hand. I'd like to recognize Wendy Chapman. You've got the floor. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll just say I own my home. I've been here 23 years. I love the neighborhood, and I'm very protective of it. My concerns with whatever goes into that space are centered around the height and size of the building, the parking, traffic, increased traffic. We love our new Snowy Range Road, and the neighborhood got quiet, and it's lovely here. And so I worry that now the traffic will pick up again. Also noise and light pollution. Right now, one of the characteristics of this neighborhood that many of us love is that most of the homes are small, and even the bigger homes are they're not that big. Also, the apartments in the building, they're not that big. You kind of don't, they blend in, which is for the most part. And these are all older buildings. We've got some new buildings in the neighborhood that are bigger, and we don't love those. I'll just say that. So as I said, my concerns definitely revolve around the final outcome of this building. And I would expect too that there would be a lot of lighting around it, and increased noise, all of those things that I listed. I also want to make a comment real quick on the comprehensive plan, the idea of infill and denser housing. I don't feel like residents of our neighborhood were taken into consideration with this. I feel like you're only considering people who aren't here yet. Because the lifestyle in this neighborhood is going to change completely if there's a lot of infill and every empty lot ends up with some kind of housing on it. And I know we don't have a plan for all the empty spaces yet, but it sounds like it's moving that direction. Laramie needs more housing, and the west side has paved streets and some empty space, so that's where you guys want to put housing. We don't really want it. And also, as far as business goes, I think a business that we might like to have either here or in West Laramie might be a grocery store. But other than that, we have a lot of businesses, and we probably have enough of them. That's my take. I have talked with a lot of neighbors. They are very concerned about this development. They are very concerned about buildings getting taller and increased traffic, and the streets being parked up. We have a lot of people who like to walk around the neighborhood, walk their dogs, ride bicycles, and they really don't have to worry about traffic. And so we're worried that would also change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments and for your time on our topic. Let's see if we have other public comment on this item. Seeing none, we'll go back to the council if you have any follow-up. right. City Clerk, a roll call vote.
Gabriel,
Yes.
O'Doherty,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Somerville,
Yes.
Schmeckel,
Yes.
Harrington,
Yes.
Cumby,
Yes.
Pierce,
No.
Weaver.
No.
That's 7 yeses and 2 noes, Your Honor.
Motion carries. That takes us to item number 15A. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I move to approve original ordinance number 2031, amending table 15.14.040-3, off-street parking standards of Laramie Municipal Code, as recommended by the Planning Commission on first reading in accordance with findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Second.
Motion is second from the Vice Mayor. Who do we have for background on this item? Mr. Tini.
Mayor and Council, thank you. The item being considered tonight for the text amendment is related to residential parking requirements. If Council recalls, planning staff has held two different work sessions with Council on housing related topics, and this discussion about parking numbers, parking requirements was discussed during both of those. One was also during the joint Planning Commission meeting that was held with Planning Commission and Council. And to kind of take a step back, the city of Laramie has been working on housing efforts for quite some time. In our comprehensive plan, and then later on in a housing study that we've done, and then more recently in the Housing Action Plan and our Economic Development Plan. Housing has continued to be a common kind of thread in terms of something that the city of Laramie is needing to address. The long story short of it is we need housing. We need all types of housing, and it's not coming on its own. And so with those studies, with the information that we've had, one of the things that Council did was we hired community builders. They're the group out of Glenwood Springs to help us really kind of dig into the housing issues that Laramie is seeing. And what we found is, the housing issues that we're seeing in Laramie are very similar to some of the housing issues we're seeing all across the country right now. Lack of houses, lack of type of houses, lack of housing for different income levels, different stages of life, everything from recent graduates all the way to your seniors. And so with that, community builders really helped us work on kind of that really big broad picture, which was found in the Housing Action Plan. And then what they also did, and something that Council had asked for, was really us digging into code and really taking a look at the codes that we have and where can we possibly make changes that could affect our housing in a positive manner. And so with that, and as we've kind of mentioned during some of the work sessions that we've already done on this, parking was one of them. And so the text amendment that you see proposed before you today is specifically and only geared at the parking related to residential development. And so first off, this is not parking that's affecting single family homes. So your single family home zone districts, it's staying the same. Right now in those zone districts, you're required only one parking space per dwelling unit. As you probably are well aware of, though, new houses are constructed in a lot different forms, 2-3 car garages, parking spaces in the driveway. So usually there's quite a lot of parking associated with them. The changes that we're really looking at are found in kind of are going to be found in more of your like multifamily districts or zoning districts or development that would be found in those districts. And so to kind of go through the changes just very kind of specifically is first we're going to be changing dwelling two families. So that's kind of your traditional duplex development or a 2-unit home or building. And really what we're doing is we're going to the same standard that we are requiring for single family homes. They're not drastically that different. They're just attached and can be looked at in the exact same form as these single family homes, which would be 1 parking space per dwelling unit. Currently today, the parking is based upon the actual number of bedrooms that are within the building. And so today, if you were to only have a 1-bedroom efficiency unit, you still wouldn't be actually increasing the parking. You wouldn't be changing the parking requirement from what we're proposing. Where you start to see the changes when you have 2 bedrooms or more than 2 bedrooms in the unit, those sites do end up requiring more parking spaces the way the code is written today. The second area that we're really looking at focusing on is in the multifamily zoning district. This is going to be pretty much anything 3 units and above. And very similar standard is going to 1 parking space per dwelling unit. In the multifamily zones, we're also requiring for every 10 units a visitor parking space so that there is a little bit of extra space found on the sites for additional parking. The other changes that you'll see in the actual parking table kind of down near the bottom is the adding of the word hospice. It was something that was just left out of code, and so we've just added it in there. It falls in that same kind of group as nursing homes and things, and modifying it instead to saying instead of 1 bedroom per it's just per dwelling unit or the units within the building. And so I kind of go back to, so the change is fairly simple. It's really not that, it's not a drastic change in the actual text of code. What the change is drastic in is actually how this affects development in our community. Parking is just one of those things that as development occurs, it requires space. And if you're going to break this down into a real simple concept, is that parking starts to compete with actually the leasable area or the developable area on these properties. When we start to really look at certain projects, we always typically find that parking is one of the largest discussion points as to where can it go so that they can get the number of units on the property to make the project work. And in our community and in our housing environment, what we're seeing is with higher costs of land, higher development costs because of where we're located, lack of supplies, lack of contractors, any place or any area that we can try to achieve savings, for instance, parking, we're finding that could be helpful in generating additional units and maybe making a development that's maybe borderline in terms of its cost effectiveness or maybe its cash flow in terms of making the project actually work, to getting it into that realm of, yes, the project will work. You also have some of the tangible things like, for instance, with less parking, you have less asphalt and less concrete and less construction. That is a cost savings. You also have things that benefit the community, like that space is no longer being used for parking. Maybe we do get another unit in, so that's good for our larger housing market, but then also too reduces maybe the amount of drainage we need to handle on a site. Also, what we find is parking, and we hear from developers, is that parking is expensive not only to develop, but also to kind of cash flow in terms of the project. And that kind of goes back to that marketability of the project that they're looking at. In the staff report, we kind of even break out some additional information about, the cost of how much spaces cost in these areas. But what I would say is that when you start to look at the actual changes that we're making for the 2-family, so duplex type development, really your impact is probably going to be much less than in your multifamily zoning or your multifamily projects. And here's why. What we're finding when people do most types of duplex type development is we're still seeing a lot of the pretty typical or standard product where you still maybe have a 2-car garage with 2 parking spaces in there. They're far exceeding the minimum requirements we have. And so you kind of say to yourself, so then why change it? The key is being able to provide options. Right now, the way the code is set up and the way that this would allow, it will allow for us and allow for people to, on smaller lots, maybe only put a 1-car garage in, or maybe put one space in the rear of the property on some of these properties that really just don't work in the traditional sense. Also, too, this is really important, I think, in creating a new type of housing within our community that maybe is reduced in price because they're no longer spending as much money on accommodating the large garages and really trying to fill up those lots and those spaces that are already existing or that are going to be developed in the future. The other thing I would say is that in our multifamily zoning districts is I think where you're going to really see the impact. On projects, even when you're talking about a 5, 6, 7 unit project, the parking space, the parking takes up so much space. And with land costs so high in Laramie, it makes projects very difficult right off the get-go. And so by reducing potentially the amount of space that someone needs for parking, not only do they have the physical cost savings in construction, but it's quite possible that maybe an additional unit or 2 could be added onto that property, which is really important in making that project actually come to fruition versus just kind of a theoretical, well, maybe it can work, maybe it can't. Long term, I think it's important. That's kind of what we do here. Is really too looking at the long-term benefits. As we go into the future, we are going to start to see more autonomous vehicles. We're going to see parking changing within our community, and we want to be prepared for that. We want to have properties and buildings that are being developed today to kind of work for the future, and that's one of those things that is important. We're also seeing just demographically, we're a college town, and younger people, many of them are not even getting their driver's licenses anymore. They're not even bringing cars to campus. They're not bringing cars, and cars are not necessarily an integral part of their life. And so as we kind of see that change, and we think that we're going to keep seeing that change, it's just another way that we're trying to be prepared. But really what I would say is I would focus on the more near term though too in this is that we do have this housing crisis in our community. And if you recall back to the work sessions, we showed this very kind of complex figure that showed all these areas and where housing affects our community, affects our economic development, affects our quality of life. And one of the things I told you is housing affects all these things. But unfortunately in Laramie, we don't have a silver bullet. We don't have just one area that I can tell you, if we make this change in code or if we make this change in our policy or practice, we can kind of solve our housing problem. We just don't have that. And so what community builders did and what we've kind of talked to you all about during our work sessions is we're going to have to take this kind of a little bit at a time. And parking is one of those things that across the nation and not only, and also here, parking affects how we get housing within our community and how that housing actually shows up in our community. And so what I would say is that really with housing and with the relationship to parking is, we are going to have less parking spaces. There are going to be areas in our community that might be more parking constrained now. But also, too, we've got to start to decide where is our priorities lie. Is it going to be making sure that we have, 2 parking spaces for each 2-bedroom unit in our multifamily zone districts and on these multifamily projects? Or are we going to prioritize the actual housing that we need in our community where these people are actually at? And so, with that, what I would say is, I'd be happy to take questions and kind of have this discussion about this. But I think that this is a step in the right direction. The last thing, too, I would say about this is as we start to possibly implement something like this, our future housing changes or really any code changes, I think another key important factor is kind of monitoring it. I know that there is some concern about parking in our community, but what I'm going to say is this, is if we start to have parking catastrophes, I think it would be completely amenable to come back and try to revisit this. I don't think we're going to see that, but I think this is something that I think that we've got to start taking these steps to try to move the housing needle in the right direction versus the opposite direction. So that's all I have. I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Good background. I did see hands starting to come up, so I'm going to call on in the order that I saw them. Right now, I've got the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Schmeckel, and then Councilmember Schuster, followed by Councilmember Somerville. We'll see if I can remember everybody in that order. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. My question is for Derek, and can you just help me out so I can confirm my math in terms of the dwelling multifamily? So my example would be if we have a 16-unit development and each one of the units has 2 bedrooms. So we have 16 two-bedroom apartments. Under our current zoning or parking considerations with this development, we will have the requirement of either 27 or 28 spots for parking, depending on how we round the 1 space for every 5 units for visitor parking, right? So it's either going to be 27 or 28 units required for a 16 units that have 2 bedrooms each under today's standards. Is that correct? Did I do the math right? Am I understanding that right?
Chair Commission, if you were to have 16 two-bedroom units, right, you would be required 2 parking spaces for each of those, or 1.5 parking spaces for each of those, 16 units, which is essentially 24 to start, 24 regular spaces, plus then your 3 visitor spaces for 28. Or 27, sorry.
Okay. So, all right. So that's how that's the standard today. 27 places for people to park.
Correct.
Now, using that same example, 16 two-bedroom apartments. Under the new proposal, we would be the developer would be required 17 units or 17 Correct. Parking spots, right?
Correct.
So so with this scenario, we are losing 10 parking spots.
Yep. In this scenario, yep.
Thank you. That was my question.
All right, Councilmember Schmeckel, and I saw you, Councilmember O'Doherty. You're on the list.
So, thank you, Mr. Tenney. You invoked economic development and quality of life, and we've been conflating those two for a long while here in a combined message. And over the past several years, we have seen a significant rise in the number of people who are renters, but they also have the trailer for the snowmobiles, or the four-wheeler, or the side-by-side, or whatever motor-powered toy they decide they want to have. If we did this, would we not just be creating neighborhoods that are not appealing to the people that we're trying to bring here because they have to choose between parking by their house or having their toys parked 4 or 5 blocks away on somebody else, in front of somebody else's house where they can't watch it?
Mr. Tenney, you want to take a stab at that one?
I would love to. Yeah. So obviously, okay. So when I invoke quality of life and economic development. So okay, let's talk economic development. I mean, we've heard from our Laramie Chamber Business Alliance. We've heard through our economic development planning process that we're losing businesses, we're losing development within our community because there's nowhere for people to live, right? So I think when I talk about economic development, I think we're seeing a loss of that simply because of the way our housing is set up. And like I said, this is many communities across the nation are struggling with the same issue. And I think, the focus is, are you going to try to take it head on and try to figure out a way to solve it, or just kind of let it happen? Then kind of going to the quality of life. I'm talking about two different things when I talk quality of life. One, so let's put away this fact of whether you have toys or not, okay, that are on trailers or in trailers, okay? Let's just talk about general quality of life. One of your most important quality of life factors when you locate in a community is what type of housing do you have? It's where you're, spending all your other time for the most part when you're not probably at your job. If you have a good quality of housing, whether that's, it doesn't matter what that standard is, but it's what works for you, I think is what's important. And right now we don't see that mixture of housing types. You can go buy big single family homes and you can live in apartments, and that's about all we have across our community. What we're really missing is that mixture of housing. Where are the 4-unit buildings? Where are the 3-unit buildings? Where's the maybe 8-unit professional housing with garages in the back? All those different types of things. So in one aspect, I'm talking about that. So then when we talk about, let's talk trailers and people's stuff. So we've got housing that, does it have to provide for those trailers? No, it doesn't. Even those apartments, those buildings that people build, a lot of times they don't even allow those there. They maybe provide or designate spaces based on the units that are in the building. So a lot of times that stuff does end up on the street. The question is the street exactly where we want all that stuff? I think that's a different question for council to consider. Is the public right-of-way the appropriate place for everybody's stuff to be stored? Or is it maybe the private sector finding those locations, in storage facilities and places like that to park those things? The other
Mr. Tina, I'm going to bail you out, because that is a whole nother can of worms. And that's a discussion that frankly we all recently had that gets into enforcement. But that was Councilmember Schmeckel, that was a good, tough question. Do you want to follow up any more with that? Do you want to get into trailers and parking trailers out on the public right of way?
That's not the can of worms I'm looking for this evening. I think that my follow-up comment is that if we have homes that don't have the parking and we're trying to recruit people that are coming for the lifestyle to participate in our outdoor tourism opportunities, using the variety of toys that they have, they still don't have housing if we have these units built. I am unconvinced. So I apologize. I don't have a question beyond
That's
that.
all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. We can circle, I hate this term. We can circle back to that if need be.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet. Mr. Cheney, it's been a hard day's night. Let's go to Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. I'm going to pick on him too, so I guess he needs to get ready. We just talked about the west side and the old Spiegelberg building. We're going to level it. We're going to put up just what you have on your cover sheet here. I'm going to put up, it shows 5 2-bedroom places. And on our new code, we have 10 bedrooms, and we only have to provide 2, 4, 5 spots for 10 bedrooms is what the amended picture shows. And I think that neighborhood would be just as upset as you today as they are right now about not knowing what's coming in. So I have trouble, and I have everything that he talked about. He talked about the trailer, the camper, and everything, but absolutely none of it is in front of my house. I don't believe in that, so I have adequate available spaces to me that none of them are on a curb and gutter or in front of somebody else's or on a street even. So I agree with what our mayor said about that people need to make arrangements, but you go down by some of these open field areas, you go down to the end of the 15th by our bicycle trail that we produced in the last 10 years, and you're going to see trailer after trailer after trailer lined up on that street. So Yeah, but I still don't think it's adequate parking. That is my opinion on it, and yeah, that's my opinion on it.
Thank you, Councilmember Schuster. Yeah, my neighborhood's chock-a-block with trailers and campers. Councilmember Somerville, and then I'm going to go to Councilmember O'Doherty. And if you're after Councilmember O'Doherty, I've lost back. Councilmember Somerville. Okay, I'm picking back up here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the questions that I'm trying to puzzle out is what order do we attack this issue? And I think some of it's already been talked about. My neighborhood's certainly the same, and West Laramie is chocked full of trailers. People buy houses out here for space so that they can store stuff. And I'll talk about my neighborhood a little bit. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't address the trailer issue first. And I apologize for the peanut gallery commentary tonight. But if we shouldn't talk about trailer storage and that stuff first before we go down this road, because I wonder, you know, for our multifamily, should we not be requiring developers to have some type of off-lot storage as part of that development instead of reducing parking spaces? And one of the things that I see over here in my neighborhood, we've got single family homes, duplexes, we've got large multifamily buildings all in this kind of Westfield Village area. And what we see is that the duplexes, they park in front of all of the rest of our houses because they've got 3 or 4 cars for their one single car garage and a driveway spot. And even as it is right now, it doesn't appear that we're providing enough parking. So I guess my question to Mr. Tini is, would it make a little bit more sense to back this up and figure out where we want the actual stuff to go before we try to figure out if we need to change parking in the future? And I say that thinking that there are probably areas in the city where this might be more appropriate than other areas. So I guess that's my question.
Okay, Mr. Tini.
Chair, Commissioner, Chair, or Mayor and Council. I guess here's
it all blends together, right?
Yeah, it's all the same. No, Mayor and Council. Here's what I would say. I think, the discussion that it sounds like Council wants to have about, parking on the street, toys and things like that, is definitely something to consider because it does play a larger role. And when you're talking about, so let's say reducing parking on, sites like this, if there is an extra car or two in a unit, that's where they park, on the street. If it's taken up by RVs and snowmobile trailers and all sorts of whatever, then that parking's not there. And I think the fundamental question is that really where that stuff should be? But what I would say is when it comes to housing is on these properties is the parking, are we willing to compromise parking spaces and maybe some parking congestion in areas? I mean, that's what some of that will happen. I mean, I've said that already. I mean, we're going to see that. Are we willing to do that to at least try to get housing in our community? Because not everybody has something. Yes, there are people that have something and that plays a role in maybe where they decide to buy, maybe where they decide to rent. But also too, when you actually don't have any housing options, you're probably just you're probably just renting whatever. And then you're trying to figure out where your trailer goes. And the hope would be is that there would be some of that, private area to put those in. Developers, maybe when we see some of this new development, I think that they will contemplate that and try to decide whether that makes sense. The other thing too is these are the parking minimums. Developers will probably have a pretty good idea of how much parking they think they should have on the site. This at least opens the door and provides the options for developers to maybe come in with a project that we just don't see today because the parking standards are where they at. And, like I said, parking is only one aspect of that broader picture of why we're in the current housing situation we're at. From our perspective, it's an easy text change. But also, we hear from developers every single time we talk about a project about how many parking spaces we require. And so that's, I would say that they are related in some aspects, but I think too that trying to focus in on where does parking lie in terms of our importance related to housing? And, do we at least give it a try? I mean, like I said, I don't think we are going to see the parking congestion that I think some people fear. I think there will be some areas in our community that we will see this. I think that there are areas, for instance, I'm going to say around the university, we will see a problem probably. But I don't think that it's really related to the actual housing that's there. It's related to the people trying to park there to get to campus. In most neighborhoods, there's usually pretty ample parking, even if somebody has a trailer or two. In other neighborhoods, there might not be, but overall, we find a lot of parking in our community. And so, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to strike that balance. We're trying to find a place where we can gain some ground in the housing and development market. And this is one of those areas. So.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Follow up, Councilmember Somerville, before we go on.
I do have one quick question, and that is, Mr. Cheney, is there a way, I'm always a huge fan of pilot projects, is there a way in our code to allow developers to request some type of consideration for some type of different project that would have different parking? Or is that not really an option? I don't know if I'm getting across what I'm thinking, but.
Can we try it out somewhere before we do it everywhere is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, basically, do we have any mechanisms to make that happen?
Mayor, council, so, you can always request a variance, but a variance is kind of an unknown for a developer. It's not really that predictable for a developer, and so it's probably not the best option. Also, too, a variance, though, has to have some sort of unique situation, and just asking for less parking isn't usually a criteria that we would agree with, okay? The PUD process does open the door for that in the right type of project, but it definitely doesn't encompass what I would say like all projects, or maybe like a standard, maybe just development that we might see. It probably really wouldn't work that well for it.
Just a reminder for everybody, planned unit development, PUD.
Correct. But here's what I would say in terms of the pilot project. We do not see rapid development growth in our community. We just don't. I would say that by kind of default, we will see a pilot project or two with the first couple projects maybe we see if these changes were made, to kind of evaluate and see how they're working. What I would say is this is, I think it would be completely reasonable to try to provide some sort of update or come back to council if we were to make these changes, provide some perspective on kind of what we're seeing, and then kind of giving some thought, do we revisit it? Because I'll tell you, let's say we see 3 or 4 projects in the next year or 2 years that take into account this type of parking change. They're probably not all going to be next to each other. They're going to be probably spread out through our community. So you're probably going to be able to kind of assess how that's working. And let's just say it's a catastrophe, right? Let's go worst case scenario. Then it probably, I think it makes sense to revisit it, because we actually have something that's tangible, like, yep, every single time one of these things showed up, no matter if it was 4 units or 20, it's created problems. And I think we'll be able to kind of see that. So I would say that we're going to maybe kind of get those pilot projects by default, but not probably in a rapid way. We just don't see that type of development in our community.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Doherty.
Every time we do anything with the development, the biggest complaints are the neighbors come in to complain about traffic and parking. New houses that have gone up in my neighborhood, the first thing they do, it's a brand new house, it's got a 2-3 car garage, and the first thing they do is put the rock down and park a trailer on the outside. So even though they have the parking, I don't know many couples except for Councilor Gabriel that share a car. I think most people have their own car. So I'm really uncomfortable with making it, with reducing for multifamily. In my experience, all the way down on Downey Street, the townhouses there, the parking spills into all the cul-de-sacs on the other side of the street. On the north side of town, all these quadruplexes, the parking, they have garages and parking, and the streets are still full of cars. And I'm just talking about the cars. The trailers are by every detention pond, every strip of land in this town pretty much that has any, there's trailers. I can think of, I've knocked on a lot of doors of this town. And I know down on the south end of town that those quadruplexes there are just spilling over so that people are parking on the yard. So, and then if I think about, I won't go there. So what I'm trying to say is, I don't know many couples that share a car. Most of us have our own cars and some of us have too many. I think that you'll find that our landscaping requirements may be more onerous. That when we require islands and irrigation, trees, so that you can't plow the parking lot. I think those things, maybe we have to rethink what our parking lot surfaces are. But once you put a building there, you can't turn it back into a parking lot very readily. Whereas if we allow the parking, a building could go up later. That study about Jackson, Wyoming that was in our packet, to me is just totally irrelevant to Laramie. So I have an amendment. I don't know if anybody wants to hear it now.
I don't think we've even gone first time for comments around.
Okay, all right, that's it. So I oppose the reducing. I think where we could reduce parking is once you have a big enough development, like some of the, beyond the fourplexes, like the Point and places like that. Once you get that many people, you're going to start averaging where you don't need as many spaces. But I think the quadruplex in town are like Crow Drive or Crow Avenue. That's also full of parking and people park across the street. So I don't see it as a good way to experiment. So I oppose this. Thanks. Except for the group home, I think we should make those changes. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Harrington. And then I'll go to Councilmember Gabriel, who I think was next after Councilmember Harrington. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Taney, do you know off the top of your head how big a parking space is square footage wise?
Yeah, 10 by 20, so 200 square feet.
So that would put I'm catching up to my math here as I'm talking. So either the sentence or the math is going to go off the rails. But so if we're talking about, 27, I don't want to tie this to a single development, but if we're talking a requirement of 27 spots, we're talking in like the 6,000 to 6,500 maybe. Again, math might be off, but we're talking in that range of square footage of the lot being used for parking. And so in the development we spoke about earlier, we're talking about a third of the space on that lot, just for that. And so, I think I guess, Mr. Mayor, I'm easing in on a comment here. My question was really just, so I'm going to
fire away, Councilmember Harrington.
All right, if council
you wouldn't be doing anything that hasn't already been done by everyone else on the council.
All right, because my question was really only about it was just a way in the door here. So, I think we talked as a council about whether or not we were going to have a conversation more seriously about what we do with trailers parked on the street. We decided as a body that wasn't something we wanted to enforce or address. And so I guess I just have to say, I don't think it's appropriate to include that as the reason for not changing parking now, because we've decided it's not something we want to talk about. So I think if we want to talk about it, if we want to use those as sort of like the reason that we don't support parking changes, then we need to be willing to address that as the issue, not the parking as the issue. So I'm not saying I'm favorable to towing away everyone's trailer, but I'm favorable to these parking changes. And I think, I just don't see how we can divide those two issues and use them sort of advantageously to hide from the sort of confrontation of it on one end, and then sort of hide from and then sort of use it as the scapegoat for why we can't make these changes. And then, I think the only other comment I would make, Mr. Mayor, is if we want to talk about how we're going to reduce our carbon emissions, and I'm not trying to tie this directly to that, but if we want to start talking about, mass transit and things like that, those are not possible in 6,000 square foot, like the bus never pulls up to your house, right? Like the bus pulls up to a dense neighborhood that has a lot of walkability. And so in my mind, if we want to start making a transition to that sort of a society more broadly, but also the way we're building our environment here in Laramie, we need to start welcoming some of this more dense development. I know it's going to have some growing pains on the neighbors. And if you have, a bunch of cars and 2 trailers, like it's going to be harder on you. But also, I think that's a necessary adaptation that we're going to have to make as a city, for my own 2 cents. And just for what it's worth, my family doesn't have a lot of trailers, so maybe I'm not the best person to be weighing in, but we exist. Certainly, my wife and I enjoy a high quality of life here, and we do so without a lot of extra trailer toys. So I think folks, that this demographic does exist here, and they do need housing. So sorry, and thank you everyone for allowing that very small question to turn into quite a rant.
Council, I'm going to say that Councilmember Harrington doesn't need to apologize for making strong points and arguments like the other members of the council have. Councilmember Gabriel, thank you for waiting. You're up.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. Derek, I envision what you're talking about on rentals by Indian Paintbrush, the duplexes and the fourplexes, those new units that just came in. A question there about what is currently allowed and how different would it be if this passes?
Mayor and council, so in terms of specifically those units like on rentals, you probably really wouldn't see a whole lot of difference because they provided parking in the rear in garages beyond what the current code requires and what the future changes would require. So like on those specifically, I don't think you would see any changes. I think to kind of reiterate, really with your 2 families, so your twin home duplex type development, not as drastic of a change, but really in your multifamily development is where you see the reduction of the actual parking spaces that you're going to be required to do being much more substantial than with a smaller unit, a 2-unit project.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. On to what Councilor Harrington was talking about. I know a lot of people in the area have the trailers and so on, but I'm kind of leaning towards favoring this from what Derek is saying, that not everybody has something like that. I know that you see it a lot, especially down 15th Street, but I think that we need to look at doing something to encourage development. We so badly need housing, and maybe, we can hopefully have some encouragement for people to store trailers and whatnot elsewhere in a storage facility. You see a lot of that in other communities. You see it going down to Fort Collins, that big unit on I-25 with trailers just packed. And, there are alternatives for people to do that. So hopefully we can encourage people, if they have extra things to not clutter up the neighborhood. But we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. Any other council person for their first time? There's only two of us. Councilmember Cumby, I'm just checking to make sure you don't want to talk on this topic before.
I was waiting on comments because I thought this was the question round. So I will wait.
We're Oliver tonight. So go ahead if you want to.
Well, I think if we're using housing as a factor to build our economy, and we talk about people who live in town and they come here and they have no cars, etc., I think we're talking about students. And I really think that we're trying to attract long-term individuals who are going to live and work here, contribute to the local economy, raise their children here, etc. And I don't know many families that don't have cars. And then you have the parents both working, you have a teenage son. And I think that many people who are attracted to Laramie come here because of the jewels of our community related to recreational opportunities, and that requires transportation. And I just think we're being a bit unrealistic to impose this type of parking ordinance onto the entire city. And so I tend to agree with Councilor O'Doherty that I would rather see this applied to localized and specific areas that are more prone to that type of population, closer to town, etc., rather than impose that on the entire community. And if I were coming in here and looking for housing with a family and a husband and being a professional, I really would not want to move into a 16-unit, 2-bedroom complex that had 17 parking spaces, and to have to try to figure that out on a day-to-day basis. So I just think this is too much, and it worries me, Mr. Teeny, when you say, well, we can give it a try, and if it causes chaos and it turns into a catastrophe, we'll deal with it then. I kind of don't like that approach. I'd rather anticipate the catastrophe and plan on it right now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Cumby. I just wanted to make sure that everybody got a crack at this. I'm going to go to public comment now. Council members, it is 8:43. I commend you for your arrangement of this evening's agenda. That was wise. We're going to go to public comment now, and we do have other items on the agenda for this evening. Public comment on this item. So we've got Mr. Glass. I'd like to recognize Brett Glass and give him the floor.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of Council. I was hoping this wouldn't be a spicy item, but simply an affirmation of Council's previous policy decision with regard to residential parking, because this is the second time this proposal, which has been brought by staff, not by the affected residents, has come before you. And I'd like to ask you to please vote it down, just as you did when it came before you before. This proposal is the result of lobbying by developers who want to maximize their profits. They now dominate the Chamber of Commerce, and they participated very heavily in the Thrive Laramie sessions and pushed for this to be included in the report. And the reason why was because they don't want to lower the prices of their housing. They want to build denser developments and increase their profits. But this would congest our city and make for a lower quality of life. I don't think we want this. This is Wyoming. where people value their vehicles and the freedom they give them. They also have more vehicles per capita than average. They like to have recreational vehicles like ATVs and snowmobiles, which typically remain in trailers and they're not being towed to recreational areas. It just doesn't make sense. I wonder if the people who are talking about this, who are proposing this, actually have even lived in many parts of Laramie, because it's already a catastrophe in some neighborhoods. People need parking for their own cars, for their guests, for their roommates, and because Laramie has so many roommate situations, we need more parking per unit than is typical, not less. I own some rental properties, and we ask for vehicle information on our rental applications, and every one of the kids to whom my family rents brings a car to campus. Everyone. We haven't had a carless tenant in recent memory, even a student. And the Point, which is mentioned earlier, has more than 4 cars per unit very frequently. We often have 2 cars per bedroom in multi-unit buildings. But this proposal will provide only 1 space per unit, even if it has 2, 3, or even 4 bedrooms, which is just insane. It also cuts visitor parking to 1 space for every 10 units, which is basically none. We need more, not less, than the current standards allow, because our streets are already parked solid, not just near campus, but all over. Now, I gave the city clerk a photo which I took recently. I don't know if it's possible to display that to the council. This is Beach Street near Glacier. The street is parked solid even though the apartments there conform to the existing residential parking standards. Now, I've intentionally gotten an RV into the picture. It has to go on the street because it's simply too big to fit in any of the apartment parking lots. But there's also insufficient parking even without the toys. All of the rest of the vehicles on the street that you see there are cars, and it's still full. The proposal also eliminates the requirement for visitor spaces in what it calls group homes, developments like Spring Winds, where many of the residents own cars, but they also have many visitors. Now, on the proposal which came to you, the document that's listed in the agenda, shows a diagram of an apartment complex, but it's a little bit deceptive. The lot isn't rectangular, it's cut off where there could be more parking, and the buildings are positioned in such a way that there's no room to make the parking lot of a good size. Also, the scale is wrong. The parking spaces in that diagram, which I don't know if you can put up, but you can look at it in your packets, are shown as being 1/3 as big as a 2-bedroom apartment. And that's much bigger than they really are. If the scale is corrected and the buildings are arranged even a little bit more efficiency, the lot. And also, if the lot doesn't have an odd cutout, everything fits right in. But in any case, we're not going to have public transport to every neighborhood. We're not going to be able to whistle up an autonomous vehicle that parks itself. And we don't want to have Lyft or Uber because they're not solutions. First of all, they pay their drivers unfairly and they sap money from the local economy, but they're expensive. Forcing tenants to rely on something like that is like saying let them eat cake or caviar. That's not appropriate, and it's not a solution, especially if we have tenants who are on a budget. Now, this very night, you adopted a resolution which says that the public should be involved in community planning. And then you also heard concerns about parking in neighborhoods where multifamily housing is likely to be developed on the west side. I think if you reach out to the public who don't know this is coming because we no longer have a functioning local press, you'll find out that they strongly oppose this change. And I really don't think that you should pass this. Again, I think you should do the right thing and affirm the policies which you've already had, because I think that you were going in the right direction. I also think that you should consider what to do about parking RVs on the streets and make provisions for that. So anyway, that's all I have to say. I'm sorry I've gone a little bit over 3 minutes here, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Glass, and for taking time out of your evening to come make those comments this evening. The city clerk was just letting you know that you were getting close to time there. It's okay. Thank you for your comments. Council, it is 10 minutes to 9. I think we can spend some more time on this topic still. Councilmember O'Doherty, I know that previously you had mentioned that you had something you'd like to bring. I wonder if you might as the Fonz would say, sit on it until the second reading if need be, and just kind of let us
That's
get back
perfect.
to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I can give people my amendments to examine. Sounds good. Thank you.
Are you amenable to that? Okay. Thank you very much. Other comments on this item? I'm going to go to Councilmember Somerville, and I'll go to Councilmember Harrington. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief, considering the time. Just one thing that's weighing heavily on my mind as a Ward 1 council member is we have more R2, R2M, and R3 than the rest of the city significantly. And this change only affects those areas. It does not affect R1. And I want to say I'm not opposed to doing this in maybe in a more select manner, but I have very serious concerns about doing this in such a sweeping manner that will affect Ward 1. In addition to the trailer policy, we have a policy in code that says you can park in front of somebody else's house for 24 hours, and then they have the right to call and have you towed. I mean, those types of policies is maybe something that we need to consider before making such a broad change. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would end by saying I'm a no tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Somerville. Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out a very similar point to what Councilmember Somerville just shared. We're talking about this as if this is like sweeping and it's going to happen to every single new construction project in Laramie. And I would just point out that I'm having a hard time thinking of sort of like a newer development that didn't provide more than our current standard, save for sort of like large buildings. So I will be interested to see if we make it there, Councilor Doherty's amendments, specifically if they pertain to sort of that realm. But I just don't, this isn't, I think we're already, a lot of developers are exceeding parking standards as we sit here. So this just opens an opportunity for select development, I think, is what I would say. So thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Good. Well, I haven't spoken on this, and I've been waiting to kind of hear through everybody, hear everybody through, and a lot of good comment on this, and I think that's appropriate. I mean, we're talking about parking. That is a primary responsibility of the City Council. But I want to make a couple of observations, and that's that first, Mr. Cheney took great pains to emphasize to us that these are minimum standards, and Councilor Harrington just touched on that. Something else for me with this is that, I think our planners are doing their job. They are looking to what's coming, and they've been telling us over and over again that parking is an issue that is a barrier to housing development. Now, we had a member of the public make some interesting points that I think are worth bearing in mind about some incentives that developers might have regarding parking, but I don't know. If we change parking requirements, if we can then extract a price out of more affordable housing development, I mean, the city really isn't in a position to do that, and I think we all understand that. At the same time, I find a lot of what Councilor Harrington said in his first comment pretty persuasive, and among some of the better arguments that I heard. And I also agree with some of the sentiment that Councilmember Gabriel shared with us. Now, I'm not sold that autonomous vehicles are coming fast enough and soon enough to be a driver for this issue, no pun intended, but I am increasingly certain we need to try some things to encourage more housing development. I voted against a measure tonight that might have encouraged infill and redevelopment. And I guess, speaking for myself, I don't feel like I can keep talking about housing and increasing the housing stock and trying to find some ways to encourage that and never doing anything about it. So I think the suggestion from planning has some merit, but I also think a lot of the other arguments we heard tonight about some of the parking problems we have are very, very real. at exactly the same time. So this is just tough. I don't know if this would help us solve our housing problem or contribute, towards the solution. I'm not sure, but it is something we can try. I do think it's troublesome. I also think we already have parking trouble in different parts of the city, and I think it's worse in some areas than it is in others, which we've heard a couple of times tonight as well. I think maybe this discussion deserves more time and some more creative thinking and some working with the planning department and talking to people and talking about it very much in the frame of we need to do things to encourage housing development. And parking, I think it's fair to say we've got a lot of qualitative feedback and data about what that might be doing in terms of discouraging development or raising costs. Mr. Tini, I wonder if we have some methods of quantifying that for ourselves a little bit. Have we had developments that might have gone up in different ways or been more dense or provided more units if parking requirements have been different? And maybe if we'd adopted standards like these, if there's a way to get a look at that and see what we might have been able to have built. I know that's pretty tough. I'm not sure, but that might help us guide this discussion a little bit. I don't know if there's a way to do that, or we can bring that as an element of the discussion in the future. So I think we need to keep having this discussion. And I think the planners aren't bringing this to us because they don't think it's important. So I'm going to vote yes on this first reading tonight, and I think we need to have more discussion about this. I don't know if it's going to make it, but I'm going to vote yes, and those are my reasons. Anybody else want to follow up? Yeah, Mr. Tini.
Mayor, Council, I'll just keep it brief. The one thing I would say is this is, hearing the conversation, hearing kind of this, I'm going to say, I feel like I'm hearing more of a concern in this multifamily, or, I'm just going to say anything over 3 units is really how the code's written. What I would say is this is consider at least getting this to allow for more public comment, allow for maybe Member O'Doherty's amendment, and looking at, maybe it isn't one dwelling unit, one space per dwelling unit or something. Maybe it's some middle ground or something. But, really, I'll say any help in the parking realm is going to be a help in terms of our housing. And so maybe we're not quite comfortable with this number, but maybe there is one that's there. Maybe let that be an opportunity to have a conversation about that versus just throwing everything out. So I'm not really hearing a concern about your duplexes, really, but we're hearing it more for other types of development. So I'm just going to leave it at that with where we're at tonight.
Thank you. Anybody want to say anything for a capper? We're getting pretty close to 9 o'clock. Go ahead, Councilmember Schmeckel.
I will say, with the condition that we really dramatically try to improve this, I'm willing to vote yes on this evening to see what we can come up with, because there were good ideas. I would love to see what the value difference shows up as in a built home if we have a limited number of parking spaces compared to, if you compare like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with 3 parking spaces versus a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with 1 parking space. What does that look like on that number for what that cost difference is between the units for the sales price?
Okay, thank you. Some feedback, kind of along the lines of what we're hoping to maybe bring to more discussion. Was there another hand up there, Councilmember O'Doherty? Did I see you looking for recognition? Okay. Getting pretty close here. Council, are we okay to go for a vote and see where we end up with this? All right. City Clerk, let's have a roll call.
Humby.
No.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Harrington.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
No.
Schmeckel.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Somerville.
No.
Pierce,
No.
Weaver.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses and 4 nos, Your Honor.
And that motion carries. And that takes us through our agenda. And council members, we would have a public comment period now, but it is 9 o'clock. I think our rules require that we go to the public comment. I'll see if there's any public comment on non-agenda items. Seeing none. Going to the next item on the agenda, which is consideration of future council work session topics, which I think we do have to cut off now and go to Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. I move we go to Wyoming State Statute 16-4-405, small letter A, Roman numeral 10, going to executive session regarding personnel.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning to executive session as stated by Councilmember Schuster, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Councilmember Gabriel, you have a question or is that your vote? Okay. All right. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm trying to get used to some of those rule changes that we made, council members. I'll see you in the executive session shortly.